It's showtime.
Good morning, everyone. Wake up on this beautiful Tuesday morning. 72 degrees out there. What a gorgeous morning it is. Get out and enjoy today. We're getting ready to go right next to me. Jamie's already ready to go.
I'm tired of standing up.
Yeah, I hear you.
Hey, good morning, I'm Jamie Cooper. This is Athens in the AM on a good-looking Tuesday morning. Thank y'all for getting up with us today. We've got two good friends of mine. We're going to be talking about Driven by Purpose by Alan Jaynes. We got it up here this morning, and my buddy John Hostetler, my Sunday school member, one of my favorites. There they are right there. We're going to check in with them in just a moment. Zack's fired up and ready to go. How many days is it, Zack, before we kick off?
31, something like that. 30, 31. I don't know the exact
countdown.
I think it's less than that. No, wait a minute. Tomorrow's the 1st, right?
Yeah.
All right. Tomorrow's the 1st, so we officially kick off. Well, they kick off that Thursday.
Yeah,
So
we don't count that. When Alabama kicks off, that's all we worried about.
What amount of money did Paul Feinbaum say that Nick Saban should be making?
I think he said he ought to be worth $50 million.
$50 million a year.
Goodness.
Which, in my view, Alan, $50 million is what I ought to be making. Instead, that's probably about what I've spent in my years trying to be somebody.
No,
but first, let's
quite.
check in with the weather and let you know that it might rain today.
We do have 40% chance of those showers, and remember, these are those summer showers that pop up. 72 degrees right now. It's absolutely beautiful. Moon was out this morning. Stars were absolutely wonderful, and it's going to just be a beautiful day today. Now, it does say 40% chance of rain in the forecast, but really not until about 4 o'clock today will you possibly see about 35% of that chance, and then it ups from there. And there's actually a chance for rain almost daily with your temperature sticking around the 80s. I know we're enjoying those.
And when you see that up
60s.
there, Saved with Gloria, that means that if you are wanting to buy a home or refinance one, go to that website and save you money. You know what I read? You guys don't sell real estate by any chance, do you?
No.
No.
True story. We'll talk about that later this week. From 1 year to year, in June of last year, the month of June, till June of this year, housing in Athens and Limestone County, house sales were up 48%.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all,
wonderful.
but that's a lot. Alan, I'm going to give you credit this morning for outdoing me with a do.
Uh-oh.
I mean, that Brill Cream, you got it going on this morning, don't you?
It happens.
It happens. We're going to do things a little different this morning. We won't play Judge James. We're going to talk about this book. We're going to get right into it to start with because John, my good buddy, has to go to work here in a few minutes. So,
And we want to make sure we get him in there.
hey, I
too.
got to still give you credit. One of the best guests we've ever had up here was little Titus that day up here.
You know Titus. Titus.
No.
Peak,
Peak.
little sausage maker from out
Beverly
your way.
does.
Yeah.
Beverly does.
They knew you.
I can't place him.
Anyway, he was good. He was good.
He
All
had
right,
the
Alan, we're
winning
going to talk
cap,
a little bit
winning
about
pig.
this book. We met you several years ago, and you just come out with your first book. Now, John, you're in my Sunday school class at Lindsay Lane, and you're a former Amish. That's a story for a different day. So,
That is a good story.
question is, how do you know Alan?
Well, he lived just down the road as he was growing up, so I've known him from the time he was born till now.
So that was where?
In Lauderdale County,
In Lauderdale County.
near Anderson.
Now, you got to leave a little bit. So, Alan, we're going to get into this book, which is very good, too.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Very
Now,
good.
what is your fondest remember of John? And then I'll get into what story that you mentioned him in the book.
Well, John was always someone that lived just right down the street, and they ended up moving a little later after that. But to be honest, John was a safe place. My fondest memories, probably at my youngest age of memory, is him working in his wood shop, making bowls and spin tops. And he was close enough down the road that I could go and hang out. And and to be honest, is the first clean house that I'd ever been to.
Now,
So-
we're going to talk about that in just a little bit because you talk a lot about that in your book here about basically,
book's about
I
his
don't
life.
mean this
It's a true
derogatory,
story.
but the filth that you kind of grew up in just because of your family surroundings and everything. So, John, and I guess you were married to Beverly at that time.
Yeah.
She's
She's my first wife.
I can't say that. But they had the first clean house basically you'd ever been in?
Absolutely. It was actually the first part of realizing that I guess at a young age, you're used to a normal, and their house was different, and it was almost embarrassing, but it was also a safe environment that was, eye-opening, and it started my journey.
So, and you were how old then?
Man, probably anywhere from 4 to 7 years old at that time when we were right down the road.
What was your impression of John and Beverly Hostetler?
Caring, loving. I mean, I don't know. It was just, if you ever had something that was your normal, and there's not really a way to explain it, that was just, they were the neighbors, and it was something that
Felt good being there.
It did. I look forward to. Literally, at one point they lived less than a quarter mile, and by 5, 6, 7 years old, I was going wherever I wanted. So I was always down there.
Quarter mile's a long way.
For a 5 to 7 year old?
Yeah, that's the untold story.
John, before you leave today, we'll talk about this book. You and Beverly are mentioned in here. We'll get to that in just a second. But what is your memories of the way Alan was brought up and where he lived?
Did you know it? Did you know what his household surroundings were like when he would come over?
I didn't know what was inside the house. I just knew what was outside the house. And of course, living that close, like he said, he could walk down to our house at any given time. And then when his younger brother got old enough, they would both come. And him and Nathan been through school all the way from kindergarten through high school. So they were always connecting and playing as kids. And
now, did you know what he was growing up in?
Absolutely.
All right, let me set the stage.
Not to the extent that it was.
All right, let me set this up a little. We're going to talk in depth about that here, the remainder of the program. This book that Alan's got out, Driven by Purpose. But Alan grew up in a horrible, horrible family situation. You can't imagine that, living a normal life, I don't guess. The filth that they grew up in over in, I guess, was that in Lauderdale County? You were born in Limestone County.
I was.
You got a birthday coming up.
Yep. About to be 25.
25.
Yeah, I'm a children.
Yeah. We both have two great Americans have a birthday coming up in August.
Oh,
Mine,
boy.
matter of fact, I got a big birthday coming up a month from yesterday.
You're just a baby.
Yeah.
A Leo.
Yeah.
Only 40 years difference.
I'm a Virgo, yeah.
Oh, it's
Good math, Zack. Only 40 years difference. So you were born in Limestone County, Athens Limestone County Hospital. And then you move out there, you meet John. I'm going to go ahead and jump a little bit here. When your mother passed away at 37 years old, who called you?
John. I was at the gym at Anderson Junior High School when it was still open, and it was after school, and caught me off guard for him to be calling me at that time, like 3:30 or 4. And he said, "Alan, where are you at?" And I said, "I'm at the gym." And he said, "Okay, I'm on my way to get you." He didn't tell me at the time what had happened or what it was, but I knew something was definitely wrong.
How old were you?
At that time, I just turned 14.
We're jumping ahead in the story here, but now John, Beverly's driving. Both of you are mentioned in the book. Mm-hmm. Couldn't get her up here this morning because I know how she likes to sleep. What do you remember about that day?
Well, I just happened to be at that time, at that place at that time, and then they had called 911 to his mother, and I happened to be the one to have to give Alan that call, and I didn't know what to say or do, and I guess the one thing that really stood out to me that I'll never forget was when I first called him, I didn't get him. I got his answer machine, and his message on there was, "Just remember, God has a plan for you, even if you don't." And I thought, boy, I wonder how.
Now you're 14 years old.
Yes, sir.
And I'll never, because I still didn't know how I was going to relay the message to him. So I just said, "I'm coming to get you." And your mother's, when I picked him up, I think I told him that his mother was very sick. And
Not your typical 14-year-old prays like you did on the way to the hospital. What did you say?
I just said over and over again, "Lord, please don't take my mother, but not my will, but yours." Over and over.
And as we'll just talk a little later, you did her funeral.
I did.
What a responsibility. For a
We're going to talk
14-year-old.
about Alan's life here in depth, because this book is really something you folks need to get. Where can they get the book?
It's going to be on Amazon shortly, but currently, if they just want to look up Driven by Purpose, thebook.com, they can email me from there, and I can meet them locally as I'm traveling right now, church to church or venue to venue, selling
Now,
books in person.
You're a minister too, aren't you?
I am.
All right. All right, I'm going to go back to John a minute before he has to leave. And John, you one of the best Christian guys I've met. I mean, we ran into you at Stanfield's one day. You're sitting in there, the little screened-in area waiting, and you said something about Sunday's church. I asked you where you went to church or something, and you said, well, I go to church with you, Lindsay Lane. And they were in Sunday school classes. Well, and I said,
come on.
We're going to be friends. You said, well, I think we're going to be in there too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't know you went out to
Been a good
church
group.
there.
Yeah.
Class has been great.
You grew up Amish.
Right.
Did you call it escaping, or did you call it just wanting a different life? Now, I've heard your testimony.
Yeah. I guess at the time I was 18 years old, and I just thought I needed to. I just needed to get away from there for a while, and I always thought I would go back. I was just 18 years old. And
You tried it once going back, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I went back after about 6 months, and then it was not for me.
He's got a wonderful testimony.
You
Do you
do.
share that with, I know you shared it with our class and men's breakfast before, but do you share that at other places if someone asks? Because it's a good story.
If people ask me to, yeah, I would.
What is it, in your opinion, and then we're going to get to Alan's deal here in a little bit too, but what, in your opinion, does it take to be a good Christian person this day and time?
Staying in the Word and keeping the faith, living the life.
There's a lot of bad stuff out there.
Oh yeah, but
Rise above it.
we can, we're not exempt from trials and hard times when we're Christians, but we do have resources to go to. And you look at this young man here, he is amazing. That's what's got him where it's not because I was in his life, it's because the God that's in both of our lives that has brought us both to this point in this time.
You just answered the question I was about to ask, but how would you describe, before you depart and go back and get to work early this morning with Bill Mitchell and Bobby Sharp down at Warrior, but how would you describe Alan James's life?
Amazing. Just looking back over the years, truly amazing.
He sent me a text the other day, and I shared it with a lot of people. I said, man, this book is, I can't believe you lived through that. And he said, Jamie, I wasn't a victim, I'm victorious.
He said, I'm not a victim, I'm victorious.
That's quite an answer. So,
Yeah.
So
I'll just say about the book, I had a couple people ask me, is that really the truth or is that exaggeration? And I would say that it's no exaggeration.
this book
After
is,
reading that book, I would say it's under-exaggerated.
Right.
Because I imagine there is a ton left out.
I grew up in New Hope, 2 brothers.
You lived
And
an
I told
awesome
Lori
life.
the other day on this right here, about reading this, I grew up, I guess I must have had the best childhood of anybody I know.
You did?
Man, we had what everybody else had. My dad didn't beat me. Our house was clean. I always had plenty to eat, lots of friends. I thought I was miserable, but evidently I had the most perfect childhood of anybody. So we had no problems.
It was a big eye-opener for him to see because he never experienced growing up in alcoholism or abuse or anything like that. So
We're going to go into that in
happens.
depth in just a little bit. Anything else you want to say about Alan before we take a break?
Just keep it up. Keep it up, my brother, friend, and continue to take care of your little brother because he looks up to you.
Yeah, he takes care of me now.
We'll talk about that
He always
more,
brought, when Alan, Nick, his younger brother, they would come to church where we went to church, and Alan would always, when Nick got old enough for him to come, Alan would be carrying Nick's diaper bag as they came to church, or sometimes when they visited our house. So
he had to take care of him.
So he's always been a good kid.
oh yeah,
Good heart.
I've had to get on him a few times.
We've had some
Now
talks.
look at you. Now you can still get onto him, right? Now
Yeah,
you're sitting
I
here
still
just as
can.
tiny as you can be compared to.
When I was 12 or 13, he would always challenge me, and he put me on the ground a couple times. So
All right, John, thanks for coming up. We're going to talk to Alan here in just a minute, so I'm going to take a break. We'll come back to sports with sports director Zack this morning. We'll talk all about that coming back in just a minute. Y'all, hang on.
Oh, we ain't doing this, Jamie. No. We're going to sports.
Well, I'm glad everybody knows what's going on today. No Judge Jamie today, Brad. I mentioned that earlier. I guess you must have wax in your ears or something.
He's been busy. He's busy.
Well, we're going to talk about that book in just a moment. You got T-shirts, books, mugs, everything else you got?
Got bands, books, and shirts.
Oh, we'll talk about that in a little bit too. Wait, he's been waiting patiently this morning. He's ready to go. It's almost his favorite time of the year.
Woo.
And we have a new sponsor in Zack Sports this morning.
Oh, really?
Brought to you by Applebee's Tailgate Talk, featuring Todd DeBod.
That's right.
Tomcat.
And Tim Lambert.
And Tim Lambert. Also brought to you by KFC. Roll the intro.
Well, hey, that's a good one. Welcome to ZTV 11 Sports, brought to you by KFC, the best fried chicken in Athens and Limestone County, and also Applebee's Tailgate Talk, where we'll have Coach Gene Stallings on this Saturday morning. So good. We're looking forward to that interview. We had this guy on, interviewed him a few weeks ago, Coach Shelby. Well, I was going to mention the Wing Fest first. Brad, you got any pictures? Hey, I was hanging out with Mojo and Ricky, and well, there was the slogan, but we had Mojo, Ricky, Brad Travis. We had some guys. There's Mojo. Mojo was actually Elvis, and Ricky was Brad Travis. So he brought in. It's kind of weird, but Jimbo and Cassio from 95.1. So we had a good time. We eat about 20-something wings. And I am sick of wings for a while, and I love wings.
You should be. Ooh.
But we had a good time, and thank them for inviting me out there. Shelby Davis, the new West Limestone coach, is getting ready upcoming season. They're actually online asking fundraisers. They're trying to raise some money for the school's sports program. So if you get online, you can see that. But he's looking forward to that. Real nice guy, and look forward to seeing good things out of him, except when he plays East Limestone. Jets and Sam Darnold ended his hold out a 4-year, $30.25 million contract, number 3 overall pick in the draft. Braves come back and won last night 5-3. Freddie Freeman had a home run. Robert Acuna, and the trade deadline's today, so there'll be a lot of big trades probably coming down before the end of the day. And Sean Newcomb was 1 pitch away from throwing a no-hitter, but they still won the game. And right afterwards, people found some tweets, racist and homophobic, and he had to apologize immediately after the game about that.
He said those when he was a kid, didn't he?
17. He was about 8 years. And then as soon as the game was over with, they found out Trey Turner, the shortstop for the Washington Nationals, exact same thing. Apparently this guy...
Okay, let's stop right there.
Apparently the guy's just going on Twitter and looking at people, former athletes' old tweets. And...
Who ain't said something bad at one time in their life? I'll say something bad right now if I want to.
But I'm just saying, that's what they were talking about on the news yesterday. They said, if you're going to become an athlete, and if you've ever said anything in the past and you don't want it to come out, you better clean. You either better get a new Twitter account or just clean it all out completely.
Right.
Because
they said everyone was going back on social media and cleaning up their posts because it can hurt your job opportunities when you're older.
I got a job.
You're just dumb when you're young. And
I got a job, and I don't care. You know, it's is that it?
That's all about you, Dan.
I just want to make sure you was finished. So, all right, Alan, you can't change some of the things you said. Sure. And everybody has said something they shouldn't have said at one time in their life.
You can definitely be sorry for it.
Well, I think one of the things that I'm a big Abraham Lincoln fan, and he wrote a lot of letters that he never sent. And I can tell you this, I've typed out a lot of things to post that I backspaced out. So I care about what I post, but that's just me.
Well, I don't post or tweet. If I tweet, it's an accident.
Ooh.
I barely do email. Yeah, I barely do email. But
it's probably a good thing.
But I got to share. I'm gonna do a Dear Jamie right now. And Alan, you're Can we say you're married?
No, he's not married.
Oh, you're not? Oh, you're not married. That's right. But you're about to be married.
Yes, September
You
1st.
got a wedding? I'm a minister here. But anyway,
You're not doing his wedding.
This is something y'all may. This is a Dear Abby, so I'm going to steal it
He's
this
not
morning.
doing your wedding.
My husband has an annoying habit, get this, of staring at me.
You are annoying.
Here it is. After dinner, if I go into the kitchen while he's still at the dinner table, he'll turn his chair around and stare at me constantly. When we walk into a room, he stops and keeps staring at me. And I've got clothes on. When I finally got sick of it, I told him to cut it out. His response was, "Can't you stand scrutiny?" I said, "It's got nothing to do with scrutiny. It's a form of trying to control me or mental abuse." He stopped it for the most part, but he goes back to it every chance he gets. What do you think his problem is, Jamie? Just likes looking at you. Staring, really?
I'm about to sick Alan on you. I've about had enough.
I mean, sometimes people, you've got better things. Unless you
That's
left
not
something
abuse.
out of your letter, I don't consider what he's doing emotional abuse.
That's like I said,
Emotional
not
abuse.
All
You
right.
call that emotional abuse? Everybody's got to abuse somebody these days with something.
And I think that's probably, going back to his book, the best thing that people should get out of this is you can be offended, you could be abused, but how you react and where you go forward is totally up to you.
Absolutely.
Well, it's just like the situation
Totally.
we're dealing with now. I want to just go on a rant and just blast these people. And you know it. But I'm not, because the older I've gotten, and you caught this at a
Smarter
lot
you
younger
get.
age than I did, the more you just revert back to what God wants you to do, the better off you're going to be. Because
Always
I
the
could say
case.
some really nasty things, and they would be true.
But don't
But-
do it.
But I'm not going to do it.
In Alan's book, and I was reading it to you, and you're how do I say this? You're gently saying what you went through. And for everything that you went through, and for you to gently want to make sure you say it without, one, you didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, you didn't want to really call anybody out, but you were just saying the truth as gently as you could.
Well, my mindset from that, in chapter 11, I go over 14 life-changing finds. And number 2 is I have found forgiveness. And I think a lot of people talk about their story in malice or in regret or in still in that hurt. And yes, I've been hurt and I have scars, but at the same time, I have forgiven. And the intent of this book is to share my story with the hope that it encourages someone else that has been through something similar, or even if it's completely different. I did not write this because I want to be painted as the victim or because I'm trying to use this as my way to cope. Now, I did have healing moments in
Did it
writing
take you a
this.
while before you could forgive all the hurts?
It did, but one of the things about a year and a half ago, I started looking at ministry in a different light, and about a year ago, I started working in drug rehab centers and juvenile detention centers. And when I started doing that, I realized that I had been carrying around a lot of emotion and baggage that I'd never dealt with. But the more you start talking about, I like to say it this way, we all have a history, but sometimes we have to learn we have a story. And there is a craft in taking your history and turning it into a story. And when I was in the place of having to share what I'd been through over and over and over again, I realized that wasn't just my history, it was my story. And then that's kind of where the book stemmed from.
Well, we're going to talk about that
That's great.
story coming up here in about 3 or 4 minutes, so y'all hang on. Y'all too. We'll be right back.
welcome back this morning. 72 degrees out there. It's a beautiful morning. Get out and do everything that you need to today. We have 40% chance of showers in the forecast today, but that looks like the biggest chance. About 35% rolls around 4 p.m. today. So hopefully we won't see those showers till later in the afternoon. Temperatures, there's actually a chance for rain almost daily this whole week, but enjoy those temperatures. 80 and look at that, 60s already. It's starting to feel a little like football.
Yeah, it's a lot like football. I hope it stays cool. All right, Alan Jaynes, our special guest today. The spelling of your last name is a little different.
It is.
But it's pronounced James.
With an N. James.
With an N, James.
All right, we're going to talk, spend a good time on Alan's our special guest this morning. Known Alan for several years now. He came out with this book. When did you get the book finished, Alan?
About like 2 months ago, and I've been working the publishing process, self-publishing.
He wrote it on his phone.
Yep.
I knew he would get a look out of
I
that.
didn't have a typewriter.
18,000 words.
You wrote it on your phone?
His phone.
Yeah.
Tell him how you were inspired to start.
I actually went to a business networking event at Low Mill in Huntsville, and which is I'm going to give them a shout out, I guess. It's the nation's largest personally owned art studio in our nation, and they think possibly in the world, but they can't prove that.
Really?
Yeah, so I was there, and I was getting this history lesson, and a couple of the shops, we were there in the middle of the day, so not all the shops were open. It was in the middle of the week. They're really busy on the weekends. And I walked into this lady's studio, and she was, I'm not familiar, I don't remember the word that describes her art, but basically she uses wax to create her art. And as the wax dries, she has to do a coat, and then it dries, and then she does another coat. So she's building layer on layer on layer, and, you know. And I'm standing back, and I'm just looking at the wall. She has all these different pieces of art, and I'm just looking at it, and I can't help it. If I have a question, I ask it, and I don't care who it is. So I walk up to her, and everybody else had already moved out. We were doing a tour, and I said, "Ma'am, how do you know when you're done?" Because I said I could only imagine if I was doing this, I would have a hard time knowing where to stop. And she looks at me, and she puts her hand on my shoulder, and she says, "Sweetie," she said, "that's the struggle of every artist. You just have to find a stopping place and walk away." And I was telling Gloria earlier during the break that that's where I'd always struggled. I've thought about this book for years, but I told her I'll be 25 in about a week. So I'm waiting, you know, I want to be a multimillionaire, or I want to have done this great accomplishment before I come rolling a book out. And I realized that if I ever waited to do that, you know, the time was now.
All right, before we get into the book itself, you have a successful business. That's where we met you a couple of years ago, and you do what for a living?
I own a marketing and consulting company, and I'm also part owner in a couple other businesses.
And done quite well.
Working on it.
Struggling in the beginning.
Let's define the volume. I don't know.
All right, let's talk about the book now. This is a Christian book. It's called Driven by Purpose, a story of tragedy and transformation. And in I'm going to go through it. I've got highlighted something as I read the book here. Failure was something that that scares us all. But that's one of the things you mentioned in the very beginning of this.
Yes, sir.
Tell us your story.
I grew up demographically. You know, I think the way that I explain it in the book and the way that I explain it in person is kind of taboo. You know, just to kind of give the short version, I grew up in a hoarder home that was probably on the level of what you would see on the show Hoarders. We didn't have carpet. We had crap. We had 13 dogs in the house.
Let's talk about that. You talk about that. You talk about crap. There was literally dog feces in this house.
Yeah, it never got cleaned up. It just got smeared in deeper and deeper over years. Behind our 2 living room chairs was basically, we had cats in and out of the house, and that was used as basically a litter box. There was not one.
Now this is here in Lauderdale County, Anderson.
Yeah.
I mean, right in our back door from Athens.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine just the smells that you had to endure.
Man, and she can tell you, I'm a smells person. I can't take it. If I smell bad, I will leave, and I don't care if I have to drive an hour to go get a shower.
Do you still smell your food?
I do. I smell everything before I eat it. I've made people mad. They invite me over to their house, and they catch me sniffing, and they're like, "You don't trust me?" Or
all right. While we're on that, y'all kind of jump.
Why did you do that?
Well, I mean, smells. I got sprayed by a skunk when I was 4. I had to take a tomato juice bath. I was always self-conscious as I got older as a child about going to school. I knew that I stunk. Nobody ever said anything.
Was it that bad?
It was, man. Because even if you use...
You had 13 dogs in the house.
And even if you use, detergent and you spray, I started using cologne at a young age because I was trying to counterbalance it. I wear Versace, so it's okay, it's good cologne, but I was spraying musk on myself trying to cover my smell.
What I was getting to here after the skunk, when your family would go fishing at the Blue Hole,
Yeah.
they would bring live catfish back and put them in the only bathtub in the house.
For up to days.
You weren't allowed to take a bath because the fish were in there. And then when you did take a bath, it smelled like fish.
Yeah. I hate fish, freshwater fish. Can't do it.
So it was really, you're telling us that, and this is in the 90s now. This ain't like 1880.
Yeah.
Little House on the Prairie.
I started in kindergarten in '98, so late '90s into early 2000s.
So they literally will put fish in the bathtub.
Yeah.
Just to keep them alive a couple days?
As a live well, before killing them and putting them in the freezer.
Did you not know this wasn't right? Or was there nothing you could do about it?
I guess conceptually, and once again, this is taboo. We don't talk about this in public. I guess, psychologists do and psychotherapists, but there's a point in which your atmosphere, you only know what you've been grown up in. The only way to truly see that is different or weird or strange is to be exposed. Just as I said earlier with John, I was going to other people's houses to spend the night, and their home was clean. And I knew for a fact that no one ever came to spend the night with me, So I started picking up these nomenclatures along the way of the differences that was in my life as compared to my friends' lives.
Because you don't know. You have nothing to compare it to.
No.
Yeah, your mom and dad they met at a bar. You mentioned Long's in here.
Yeah. Don't get Larry on me.
You didn't mention Ronnie's place.
I don't know which one it was. I just know it was his
You
line.
mentioned Long's.
Yeah.
And your parents met there. Your dad, is your dad still alive?
He is.
Does he ever get a job?
No.
So he's been unemployed for a long time.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to this when you were a kid. It was actually, and it's hard to imagine, this wasn't just the 90s. You're 25 years old at the 8th. Most people can't imagine that.
No, they can't.
And it never got much better, did it?
No. There was a point in which my mother moved my brother and I into a place of our own. But at that time, she was working 12 to 16 hours a day, just trying to pay, for two young boys.
All right. Your grandfather, Tennyson, was probably, you said here, one of the saddest characters in your childhood account.
Yeah.
Hard worker?
Absolutely.
And never had much to show for it.
No. He worked to a retirement age working for Murray up in Lawrenceburg. And, he was a farmer. He owned a lot of acreage and watermelon. I still got some pictures I cherish of me and him, but he was a watermelon farmer and cantaloupe, tomatoes, peas. I remember picking peas and cracking watermelons open. That was actually while he was still alive. It was on my other side of the family, the other set of grandparents. It was still a crazy situation, don't get me wrong, but he was definitely a safe place because out of all of my biological family, I felt as if he was the only grandfather or biological family member I have besides my mother and some extended family that never meant ill towards me. And he was calm and collect, and he was simple. If you met him, you may think he was strange, but he was a simple country folk kind of guy.
You said the three things that you remember growing up were cockroaches, cigarette butts, and the smell of urine.
Yeah.
Most of us can't fathom that.
Yeah.
And you're a kid.
Yeah. One side of my family were hoarders, and then the other side of the family lived a very different lifestyle, but the same on its own level. It was the same. And I remember in that house,
How many people lived in that house at one time?
Well, the house that I grew up in, we had up to 1.9 to 11 people coming in and coming out. I drive by this house now and I look at it from the road and I'm just like, man.
Somebody still live in it?
No, now that house is basically it's personally owned. It's not condemned necessarily per se, but it's unlivable.
And once your grandfather died, everybody wanted the money or the land or whatever, and it was kind of a family situation.
So
there.
my grandfather died. That grandfather is my father's side. He died I want to say 2009. I think I did my mom's funeral in 08, and then I did my grandfather's funeral in 09, which was my other grandfather, not her dad, but the other grandfather.
So no one else in your family is stepping up at this point to say, I want to help. I mean, you're planning funerals?
Yeah,
you're doing funerals?
Even with the start of my mom's funeral.
At age 14?
At 14, we were at ECM in Florence, and as soon as the doctors told us that we're sorry we lost Catherine in the ambulance, everybody freaked out. I mean, my immediate family was there. My brother at the time didn't know. I mean, he was at a Little League baseball game, and they were trying to keep him away from the situation until we knew. But everybody kind of either went blank, freaked out, or left the room.
Who had to identify the body?
I did. I walked in to the morgue, you know, and I remember, and this is just part of the story, but I don't even know if I put this in the book, but I remember seeing my mom's body there in the morgue.
Did?
I did, okay. And blood was running down her nose. And then the nurse came in and she was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, listen, that's not my mom. That's her body, but she's not here.
And you're 14 at that time.
Yes, and yeah.
All right, you've got a statement here backing up a little bit. I personally take the stance that you can't choose the family you were born into.
Oh, man.
But you most definitely are allowed the family. You most allowed to choose who you call family.
Yeah.
Blood does not mean family. So you grew up in a bad family.
Biologically, it was rough.
And I asked him, I said, you know, since you've written the book, has there been any family members attack you for it, basically?
Right.
And you said, no, they're either on meth, alcoholics, or just really just no one else left.
Yeah, and I've had some extended family reach out to me and want to know who. And as you can tell from the book, I was very careful.
You don't mention many names.
I'm not.
No.
And only if in a positive light.
And you were abused, too. We haven't even mentioned that part yet.
I was. And, you know, the goal of this, once again, is to share a story of victory and hope, not to, I did not use this as a way to cope
Or be
with
a
my
victim.
past. I'm not a victim.
Play a victim.
You
right.
say here the best part of a rough past is the opportunity to remind others that there's always hope. There's always a future.
Absolutely.
And that's your big point is
That's the whole point.
you can't live in the past. You've got to make a difference.
Man, I watch people every day. I don't care if it's personal life, church life, business. I see so many people who are stuck in their past to the point that they counterfeit and forfeit their whole future because they can't get over one thing of their past.
Why do people want to claim they're a victim and keep blaming others when they're moving on with their life and they always go back? Is it addiction?
I think victimhood is the easy way out in a sense, and I know that doesn't make sense because we think
that
that's
makes a lot
harder.
of sense.
But victimhood is easier to choose and claim because then you always have an
Sympathy.
a scapegoat to put that issue of why you did not succeed or why you could not get through your past.
Now let's go back to one thing when you and your brother. And it said, here's a quote from you in the book here on page 30. You said, my grandmother used to lift me and my brother into dumpsters behind local grocery stores to get food out of the trash, meat, milk, canned goods, anything that she approved of, we took. Now, y'all were that poor?
You know, and that's an ironic question because honestly, were we that poor? No. But I think what money that came in was used on alcohol. I mean, we had at the end of each week, fathom this, at the end of each week, those 55-gallon big blue barrel drums, we would have, my family would have a whole entire blue barrel filled in a week's time. I mean, there was 2 24 packs almost every night drunk between several people. So that
Well, they were beer drinkers.
Absolutely.
So that's what money was spent on.
And that was the lifestyle. And then, you know, my family never bought anything nice. They bought junk cars that they were going to fix. You know, they bought things that were unnecessary. And that's where the hoarding came
So they
from.
weren't a Christian family at all.
Later in life, some of them began to see, you know, the truth or want to make changes. So I wouldn't say that. But, I mean, I would say, you know, I do remember here in town in Athens, I mean, Kroger, where we were being lifted behind, you know, there. And it's, I think, Jamie, I'll say this. To you and me, we look at things as strange. You have to realize, we look at people and say, why do people do what they do? Well, you have to realize, and I talk about this a lot in my book, that's their reality. They were either born into that cycle that they never got out of, and they never left it, or they have made these decisions so much in their life, that has become their norm.
Before I take a
all they
break, I
know.
want to read just one other thing. You talk about forgiveness, and you've got a quote in here from somebody. Forgiveness has changed my life. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison yourself and waiting for the other person to die. But you are big on, how do you forgive the people you grew up with?
How do
you do that?
Man, you know, once again, probably not the traditional answer, but I take Ephesians 4:32 to heart. It says that we're to love one another, be kind and loving one another, and it says forgive one another, and pay attention, just as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. And that verse points out that forgiveness to you and I may be free through grace, but it wasn't free. It was, someone had to pay for that. And I look at forgiveness in the same way individually. Forgiveness hurts. Even the process of forgiving, you have to be the lesser person sometimes. But to me, that's okay, because Philippians tells us to have the mind of Christ, that how can the Creator, His Son, step into humanity, take on the role of a man, and then become a servant and die? That's my example. And that's what we call in Scripture the mind of Christ. So not to be a preacher per se this morning, but that's literally, I'm not preaching or teaching. That's how I live my life. I mean, I will forgive people on a dime. Not always, but that's kind of, I wake up every day. I mean, that's part of our prayer life, is help us to handle adversity with a forgiving mindset.
Can you forgive but not forget?
Well, I think forgiveness oftentimes gets confused with reconciliation.
Here's one of the
Good
best
point,
things I've
good
read.
point.
It's just a quote you've got over to the side. I guess this is the way you are. We are products of our past, but our past does not have to produce our future.
Absolutely.
And that is your story.
Yeah, I mean, I'll forever be, and I'm going to use the word tainted, not in the negative way, but I'm tainted by my past. There are the smell thing, I have to, you can ask Michelle that everything in my life has its place, and when things get cluttered, I freak out. I have to have a clean space, and it's not because I'm OCD, but because I have certain little tweaks about myself that I can't change. And I'll share this one thing too, is my brother and I both have you can call it Tourette's. That's what he was diagnosed with. I never went to the doctor, but we both, in stressful moments, we will twitch out of our skin, and we do that. I do that every day, and I don't even feel it coming, and it just happens. But I've done a lot of research on that, and that's probably a form of a response to PTSD of my past. That's where my stress comes out. I don't yell words, but I do twitch violently sometimes when I get stressed. And that is something I've been doing since I was a child. And it was because of what we both went through.
You've not twitched not one time.
Not
I'm
one
so
time
proud
either.
you're comfortable.
I'm chill.
I want to go back to Gloria, talk about your mom, and when she passed away at 37. But you say in the book, your mom, like a lot of women know, but your mom was your hero. And she never met a good man. And there's a lot of women that way. But your mom tried to do better for you, but she was just unable to do that.
Yeah. I talk about in the book, my mom was also a product of her upbringing. But my mom was actually, I mentioned this in the book, my mother trusted the gospel and trusted Christ as her Savior 2 years to the day that she died. May 6th, 2006, I came home from a service at church, and I told my mom at that time that I knew that I was supposed to be preaching the gospel, but I didn't want to talk to anyone else about it until I had shared the truth with my mother. And that night, my mom trusted the gospel. And when that happened, for the next 2 years, I'm not going to say that she changed a lot of things that had been in her lifestyle, because once you go so far, that's all you know. Mm-hmm. But her character changed, her attitude changed, and just the way that she loved changed. So, no, I would say my mom never met a great man, but my mother did meet Christ. And,
that's a great man.
Well,
like Forrest Gump. That's all I got to say about that.
Where do you, you grew up, we can't, people like us can't imagine what it was like growing up, and then you've been successful. You've got a great business, and you're spreading the word now to folks, but really, what is Alan Jaynes' purpose now in life?
I mention this in the book, and I mention it just every time I speak. I truly believe, and Jamie, the word purpose is relative. Everyone has their opinions. Everyone can kind of conclude their own thing. But I chalk my purpose up to what brings me so much joy that I can do it every moment of every day and never have to make money doing it, I know that that is how I define my purpose. And so with that being said, my purpose is bringing a message of hope to the broken. And I don't care if you're a multimillionaire. I don't care if you're middle class. I don't care if you're in poverty. If I sat down yesterday in a business meeting and I was supposed to be talking about marketing and sales, and the guy starts telling me his story, and people do that all the time and I don't know why. So I spent the next 30 minutes ministering to him, and I don't even know if I'm going to close the deal, right? But it doesn't matter.
What do you tell people?
I mean, it depends on the situation, but, you know, and oftentimes I try not to be audacious and get into my story because I share it so much. I don't want to be the center of attention. I'm big enough to not have to worry about trying to do extra. But I do tell people all the time that if they will focus on finding their reason and their purpose, their why do I do what I do? When you find your why, a lot of these other things that are really petty and unnecessary, they start to drop off. If you know exactly why you're here and what your life calling is, and once again, that's speculative, but for me, I know that in my life that when I keep the main thing, I don't have a lot of worries that the normal world has.
So is it safe to say, or is it you have forgiven the people that forced you to grow up the way you did?
Absolutely. You know, from forgiveness, it kind of moved into sadness, and from sadness, it kind of turned into just pity for them. You know, and I've reached out to a lot of my family. I've talked to several family members that are mentioned in the book, not by name. I've talked to them, and I've told them to their face that I forgive you. Does that change the past? Not at all. But what it has done is it has released me. You read that quote from Marianne Williamson. I don't drink the poison and expecting them to die.
All right. What do you want people to get out of this book?
The main synopsis of the book is I've written it with hope that somebody reads this. I'm not trying to get a wow response. I'm not trying to get people to feel bad. I want people to embrace, if they can read my story and they can see my takeaway of my story, I want them to start sharing their story and realize that their life has purpose as well.
So you're not a victim?
Absolutely not.
You're
I'm more than a conqueror in Christ Jesus.
All right. Alan, thanks for coming up. Where will you be preaching next, and how can people get in touch with you?
This Sunday, I'll be at a little church that I grew up in, that I was saved at, Cherry Grove Baptist Church in the edge of Limestone County. But, Jamie, if there's any churches, that's the big thing that I need help with right now, is just more opportunities to speak.
Right. So any churches out there, you're talking to detention centers,
any denomination,
Boy Scouts,
any venue, I will go.
Thanks for coming up. It's always been a pleasure, and congratulations, and the book's awesome.
Thank you
so much.
All right. We'll get out here for the day. We'll see y'all bright and early tomorrow morning at 6. Gotta go. Bye.
Bye-bye.